Welcome to the Robertson Radio Show. Today I'm going to be talking about North Korea, and I think North Korea is an important topic to talk about today because just yesterday evening it was announced that 2 US carrier strike groups were headed towards Korea. There's one already there, that's the USS Ronald Reagan, and the USS Nimitz and the USS Theodore Roosevelt. They're headed out there. This is a very significant move because although it's commonplace to have one carrier strike group in that region, having 3 there at the same time is very, very unusual. The last time I can think of 3 carrier strike groups in the same region was the first Gulf War. So this gives America total capability for a regime change operation, a total war, if you like. Okay, let's just listen to some of this rhetoric that's come out of Trump over the last few weeks. I mean, to say it's undiplomatic is an understatement. It's the kind of thing you hear in a school playground. It's not the kind of thing you hear in international politics. And it really does demonstrate the narcissistic and hair trigger nature of someone like Trump. And this is one of the reasons why we should really, really take this seriously, because he's not the kind of guy that would back down. So here we go. Anyway, let's take a listen.
They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen. He has been very threatening, beyond a normal statement. And as I said, they will be met with fire, fury, and frankly, power, the likes of which this world has never seen before. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think this is a very real danger because, as the CIA director said the other day, North Korea is very close to achieving its total capacity to strike the US. Some would say 3 years, and he said 3 years maximum. I would say 3 to 5. But America has to behave as if it's a matter of months. Because once Korea achieves that capability, then America's options are very, very limited without the risk of receiving significant damage to themselves should they want to take North Korea out or get rid of its weapons program. So we're looking at a very short time frame of months for America to do what it's going to do. Unfortunately, it appears, looking at what's happening and the rhetoric coming from Trump and the rhetoric coming from Kim Il-jung, that war seems almost inevitable. But it's not inevitable in any way because the solution is extremely simple. North Korea has only ever wanted one thing, a peace deal. And what a lot of people are not aware of is the fact that the Korean War never ended. All that happened was an armistice was signed. And so this was a cessation of hostilities. And it means that the war is effectively ongoing. And if you look at North Korea's perspective, in the first war, or the war that still continues, in fact, they were bombed into the Stone Age. They lost millions of people. And they remember this. And they look across the border and they see 50,000 US troops in South Korea. They see missiles. They see nuclear bombers in the region. Hundreds of thousands of other troops in Japan. And they see this rhetoric coming out of Washington. And every 6 months, these massive military exercises where they test run bombing runs on North Korea. So it's little wonder that North Korea is absolutely paranoid about this situation. And for years and decades, in fact, North Korea has said, look, if you agree to bilateral talks about signing a peace deal, then we will suspend our weapons program, and then if we get a peace deal, we'll scrap it. It's as simple as that. So all America has to do is agree to talks. Nothing more. And they can bring the world back from the brink. But they're not willing to do that, it seems. Now, North Korea can be understood because it looks around the world and it sees all the countries that have given up their weapons of mass destruction without any agreement from the US have faced annihilation. If you look at Iraq, you look at Libya, you look at what's going on in Syria now. So North Korea has learned this lesson. It's like, well, the only way to give us a chance at survival is to have the capability to strike back at America. So it's a situation where both countries now, North Korea and the US, have boxed themselves into a corner, and neither of them seem able to get out of it because, unfortunately, Trump is a narcissist egotist, and so is Kim Il-jung. I mean, Kim Il-jung wanders around the place with all of his lackeys, giving orders. People are too scared to advise him properly. So there's no counterweight, there's no counterbalance, there's no counter-argument. With Trump, he has a similar personality. Thankfully, the administration is a lot bigger than just Trump. But it does look as if the administration is heading towards war. And from an American perspective, I can understand it too, because they're thinking, well, we only have a matter of months and we could lose all options, so it's now or never. But like I said before, the solution is very, very simple. Just offer talks on a peace treaty. Now, I think there are several reasons why America is completely unwilling to offer these talks. One reason is because they're frightened that a peace deal will be signed. Because they see having 50,000 troops and anti-ballistic missile systems in South Korea is very useful, not against North Korea, but against China specifically, and partially Russia, which has a small border at Vladivostok. The thing is, though, it's such a risk for the strategic benefit they gain from having this foothold in South Korea. You've got two countries and two people specifically playing chicken with the world. And the people facing annihilation are the North Koreans, the South Koreans, the Japanese, the Americans on the Western seaboard, for the sake of two egos. It's a ridiculous situation, really. And America really needs to look at the bigger picture. It has 100,000 troops in Japan and the region. And it has these troops in Japan and the region because of a post-war agreement with Japan about defending Japan. So it would still have a huge strategic advantage without the risk. Because Japan and Korea are very close to each other. It wouldn't really change the dynamic. It would be like Russia or China having troops in Mexico or Central America. And we all know how America viewed that. Just look at the Cuban Missile Crisis. It nearly ended in war. So, what do we know about North Korea's capability? Well, we know North Korea has the capability to weaponize nuclear weapons. We know that they can produce nuclear power, and we know that they can mine uranium. So they've got the whole process. They can mine the uranium, they have the uranium reserves, they can put the uranium into nuclear power stations, uranium-235. They can make it weapons grade, so they have the centrifuges and they have the weaponizing process. They can also create plutonium, so they can create uranium bombs, plutonium bombs, and now it appears that they have a hydrogen bomb, which is much more powerful. What we don't know is if they can miniaturize those bombs and put them on missiles. We know they've got missiles that can reach across the Pacific. Some people say they can reach the western seaboard of the United States. This isn't confirmed, but it's certainly possible, and it won't be long before they have that capability. But once they've got the capability, the hard bit is building the bombs, and a hydrogen bomb is very powerful and quite advanced technology. So once they've got that, it's a fusion bomb rather than a fission bomb, then the next step of miniaturizing it onto a warhead is difficult, but really not as difficult as the initial process. So they're really very far along the process, whichever way you look at it. And some people would argue that they've already reached that capability. But really, that's irrelevant, because they have launched ballistic missiles from submarines. And they only need low-tech submarines that can wield one or two of these ballistic missiles. And low-tech submarines can be detected generally. But if they've got 50 or 60 of these submarines wandering around the Pacific, which is a huge ocean, they really only need one or two to get through, and they'll cause absolute devastation in the US. One could argue they don't have the targeting technology, but there's another technology which is equally worrying, or two technologies in fact. One is their cyber capability. It appears that they have about 6,000 specialist cyber hackers who are very, very professional, and they've committed some very audacious attacks in the recent past. And these can target US infrastructure, they can target the US military, but they also have another capability, and that is EMP devices. Now, the regime in North Korea has said that they plan to test one of these devices in the next few weeks, and we will see. Basically, what an EMP device is it's a nuclear explosion which is detonated in the atmosphere. And what it does is it emits a huge electromagnetic pulse. And this destroys all of the technological infrastructure of the country which is below it. So accuracy is not really an issue. It just needs to be detonated miles up in the sky above the target country. And then you'll find that all transformers, transistors, silicon chips will all blow, and all technology will cease to happen. The military will grind to a halt, but that's the least of their problems. The energy grid would go down, the communications network. No one would be able to communicate with anyone anywhere. There'd be no energy supply, like I said. It would lead to no food in the shops. All of the businesses, all the transportation, all of the services, everything would just simply stop, and chaos would ensue. And in a country where there's a couple of 100 million firearms, one can only imagine the devastating effect of people panicking, people not being able to get any information. There's no food in the shops. There's no way to switch the lights on or talk to anyone, or nothing. There's absolutely nothing. And so people will start looting, and North Korea can very much just let America destroy itself. And I could quite easily see America not building walls on its border, but Canada and Mexico building walls on their borders, because the chaos in America would be unprecedented. It's something that the world has never really witnessed up till now. I think in history it's been proven time and time again that it's only when countries are threatened, like North Korea, that despotic regimes can survive. Iran is an example, although I wouldn't class them as despotic. Yes, they are very anti-American for obvious reason. But if you look naturally, people don't gravitate towards those kind of governments. They don't gravitate towards theocracies. They don't gravitate towards military dictatorships. And it's under these circumstances that someone like Kim Il-jung can stay in power, because I'm pretty sure that with all the propaganda in the world and all of the personality cult his people could muster, if North Korea didn't have a legitimate enemy and didn't feel it faced annihilation at any point, it wouldn't be long before people would start to question why it was so poor and spending so much money on its military infrastructure. Again, I just hope enough pressure can be put on them at the United Nations, both parties, to say, sit down, sign a peace agreement, and let's get talking and move on from there. North Korea has already stated that with a peace treaty, they'd be willing to scrap their nuclear program. So they need to restate that in the UN, put the offer on the table unilaterally, and then the rest of the world has to try and pressure America to accept that deal. It's, at the end of the day, it's not giving up anything. It's just saying, okay, we're going to stop hostilities and you're going to get rid of your nuclear program. It's a good start. Then you can go on to talk about other things. And I think it wouldn't be long before the regime, slowly but surely, either opened up or collapsed. One of the reasons why Iran elects hardliners like Ahmadinejad, we have a reformer now, thankfully. We have a reformer because of the Obama administration and the nuclear weapons deal with Iran. But as soon as we put pressure on these countries, they tend to elect conservative nationalists and more hardline regimes. People in America are obsessed with Putin, but Putin is there because when Russia opened its arms to the West humiliated it. They strip-mined it. They put oligarchs in there. They caused a coup. They went on to attack Russian interests all around the world, bombing Serbia, attacking their allies. They promised, as part of the deal, if you let Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania free, then we promise you that NATO will not go even 1 inch east towards Russia. But now even these countries are in NATO. NATO goes right up to the Russian border. We're talking about Ukraine. That was a step too far. So is it any wonder that Russia has a strong leader like Putin? America and the West have created the monsters that they now face. And I'm not calling Putin a monster, by the way, but he is in the eyes of the Western media, that's for sure. I think he's just a symptom of the attitude that the West has had towards Russia. And they've found consolation in a leader that stands up and gives Russia some of its pride back, which I can understand. If I was Russian, I'd feel exactly the same way. So again, this is, going off topic slightly, but this is the same situation for North Korea. If you keep using the stick approach and beating people down rather than nudging them into the right behaviour, then what are you going to get? You're just going to double down the problem and make it worse and worse. And in the end, we're going to end up in a thermonuclear war.